Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crystal Water Experience podcast with me, Dr. Jo Whitaker. And today I'm going to be bringing on David Edelman, the people's lawyer. Every week I bring on a new guest who is a subject matter expert or has got an amazing story to tell. And what you'll find on my podcast is things that are not mainstream, but we're going to bring you the information to increase your knowledge, your health, your wealth. And David is definitely an inspiring person. You're going to want to hear what he's got to say today. So thank you very much for being on the podcast, David. It's an absolute honour and privilege to have you here since I've been following you for the last 4 years.
Well, thank you very much, Jo. And the pleasure and privilege is equally mine. It's great to be here, and it's great to share a platform with someone who's reaching out to a wider and larger audience, because that's what we need to do now.
Yes, we were just speaking just at the beginning that though whilst I said it's not mainstream, we are going to be a bit mindful about how we approach things and the topics that we're going to discuss, because me and David could go down very many rabbit holes. But we feel now there's a much wider community of people that are awakening to various things. And we also don't want to kind of scare people. We want to show people solutions and things that you can do. And therefore, we're going to create some topics today that you probably haven't heard very much about. So we're not going to bang on the same drum as everybody else. So there's going to be some positivity. But I think what we should quickly do, though, David, is go back a little bit and just explain how the people's lawyer came about.
Well, I couldn't call myself the people's lawyer if I wasn't actually a lawyer. So we have to go back to the 1980s, would you believe? I don't look old enough, but there you go. We have to, well, I am. And we have to go back to the 1980s. I'd gone to Cambridge University to study law and then done solicitor's training, the academic side, then the practical side where you do some practical work in a solicitor's firm. And I got through that process and became a solicitor. That's the short version of that story. And then it had 1 year post-qualification, and I'm leaving chunks out because I was already disillusioned with the system back then, and I was just going through the motions. But I took the qualification, went on a journey through life, and came back to the law via education. So I'm condensing 30 to 40 years into just 1 minute here, because we don't have too much time. And on this journey, I became an educator, and it wasn't about law. It was about educating the Spanish to learn English, then the English to learn Spanish, because Spanish is my second language, because I lived there for 7 years. And then when that work dried up, because I was in school sponsored to teach a card game, would you believe? And when the sponsorship dried up, I had to learn how to live with minimal to no income. And that got me back on the law route, which was learning how to be lawfully free of systemic challenges and systemic pressures and systemic so-called obligations like council tax bills and God knows what. Because if you actually know where to look, you find out that these things are not as obligatory or as compulsory as you might first believe, because the mainstream is all about protocol and about habit and about tropes and about doing things because that's what people do. But if you just take time out from the systemic nonsense, you actually find out that people are only doing what they're doing out of habit, not out of conscious choice. So my journey over particularly the last 10 to 15 years, has been making more and more conscious choices and learning more and more about how to make better choices. And that led me to go back into studying law. And now we're around about 2012, 2013. I'd already started on the lecture circuit because I'd already gone down a few rabbit holes learning about the true history of law and finance and various other things, and health. And so when it all got personal and I had no income, I thought, well, I need to find out how to live on a minimal income. And that led me down various channels. I watched a video called The Nature of the Cage, and that opened my mind to how the law should work, which is, We shouldn't feel strangled by the system. We are the beneficiaries of the system, but things have got turned on their heads, and they send us to school to distract us from how the system is actually corrupting us. And that's another chapter of my life there, because one of the things that my being defunded from schooling led me to do was write a book called School No Place for Children. And that came out in 2018, roughly. Meanwhile, I'm still continuing on the lawful self-education, and I'm starting to be recognized locally, and this is the north of England, particularly Manchester, which is where I come from, as someone who knows quite a lot about the law. And so people are coming to me, they're starting to come to me personally, to my actual apartment, for lessons in law, in true law. And this develops, and now we're in 2020 now, when we all know what happened in 2020. But towards the end of 2020, I found myself on the promenade at Morecambe, and there was a crowd of about 200 when, according to the rules, there should have been a maximum of only 30. So the three speakers that day, all of us got arrested. And as I'm kind of going back on myself a little bit, but go back to about half an hour before I was arrested for organizing an illegal gathering of people, I had to introduce myself to the crowd. And I was just about to say, hello, some of you, or a lot of you don't know me, because I'd had a secret invite from one of the other speakers. And I wasn't well known at the time at all. I was just known in parts of Manchester, but certainly not in Lancashire or Morecambe. And I said, well, my name is, and I got stuck there, and there was loads of police officers looking on, because you could tell that they were, there was going to be arrest that day. So I thought, well, I'm not going to tell them who I am. I need something else. And the people's lawyer just literally landed on my head. So I announced myself as the people's lawyer. I didn't know what I was doing with that descriptor, but at least I didn't give anyone my name. I still got arrested, and I was de-arrested in just a few minutes. And it's very interesting, because the three of us that spoke that day, all arrested, but with different strategies. I was given a very gentle arrest because I didn't struggle, and I actually went into bliss because I think, I've got 200 people witnessing a nice, gentle, peaceful arrest. So I just sat at the back of the police van, just beaming out this smile, just thinking, yes, I've got some serious street cred here, because 200 people have witnessed me being arrested. And as soon as I was taken round to, it was Morecambe Police Station, I just gave them a name. It was a real name. It was my actual name. And because I'd heard them say on the intercom, we'll just get a name and then de-arrest him. I thought, well, if that's the protocol, I'll go with that. And funnily, later on, about 6 months later, I did get a summons, and that's another day's work. But I was able to rebut that using a conditional acceptance. So if we get time, I might discuss that, but we probably won't. But the point is, in terms of the people's lawyer, that's when it landed, because it's not me, it's a concept. And then 6 months later, it had a website. And the courses that I'd been running on location at my actual place where I lived became an online course. And it became the People's Lawyer Privacy and Universal Rights course. And now it's the People's Lawyer Privacy and Universal Sovereignty course, because, as we discussed before we came on air, what people, and I only appreciated this about 3 years ago. I don't know where I found it, but it just came out of nowhere, that everyone's banging on about sovereignty. And when you take your sovereignty into the system, they just laugh at you. Well, they're quite right to laugh at you, because for a true sovereign, you need an army, you need a castle, you need your own food supply, your own monetary system. That's sovereignty. Like a sovereign nation state, like France has, well, obviously it's got euros now. They used to have the French franc, and we have sterling, and America has dollars. But the sovereign is someone that is in a state of sovereignty over self, in self-governance, making their own free will choices, bodily autonomy, personal integrity. And they have their own moral values, and which they can derive from the system, or they can get from a higher place, from the cosmos, or from God, or from divinity, whatever, delete where applicable. But the idea is that my main theme for people as the people's lawyer is, you can be the alpha and omega. Well, you are. the alpha and omega in your own life. Whatever the system and whatever the narcissists around you have tried to distract you from, and however they've tried to do it, because we are living in a narcissistic, we are coming out of the narcissistic paradigm, but we've still got one foot in it. And in this narcissistic paradigm, it's not about what the system can do for you. It's about what you can do for the system. It's not about what the narcissist can do for you. It's what you can do for the narcissist. And this is something that we've all had brushes with this in our lives. And we are now reforming, regrouping, so that we're surrounded by people that will interact rather than transact. And I know that this is one heck of a long sentence, but the idea is that we are forming lives based on higher values, higher truths, and the idea that only we decide what ultimately who we are and what we do. Let me just give you one anecdote about, I need to ground this a little bit. When it was, go back to 2021, and I was in a shop in Wales when everyone was still wearing masks and the lockdown was still on. And I went into a shop and the woman behind the counter said, "Excuse me, sir, but you need to wear a mask." And I said, "I can't do that." And she said, "Why not?" And I said, "Because it's against the law." And that collapsed the conversation. And she just, her head bowed, and that was the end of that. If she had had the energy to ask me, "What do you mean by it's against the law?" What I would have said is, it's against my law. This is my body. I make the law. And my law says I do myself no harm, which is the only universal principle worth talking about. Do no harm. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And certainly don't obstruct your own airwaves. I mean, that's self-harm on steroids. So I was just giving her a lesson in true law, which is very simple. You know, when you consider that the Americans have got 60 million legal codes and we've got about 10 million, you know, statutes and regulations. But really, there's only one law that we need to bear in mind and act on, which is do no harm. And you can put the word self in brackets in front of the word harm. And so it was very straightforward for me to rebut her presumption that everyone should be wearing a mask. And so that's really the kind of thing that I teach. It teaches if you as sovereign in your own life decide that something is not right for you, that's it. Then you're not doing it.
Absolutely incredible. I love that story. And can we just touch on that just a little bit? So, how would you describe yourself? You would say, "I am sovereign." Is that how you term it? How would you use that word?
Well, it's not, I wouldn't use it in the vernacular. I don't use it in everyday conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do is when people are showing signs of a lack of sovereignty, then I'll point out, or when they're showing signs that they do get it, and they use the word sovereign, then I say, "No, I think you mean sovereign." And then they will ask me, "What do you mean?" I say, "Well, sovereign is someone who is self-responsible, self-accountable, and who filters everything through a prism of personal truth." And if you had done the research, then you would know that certain things were just not true. And it was, and that's a massive precondition. How many people have taken the trouble to do the research? And how many people are simply operating on gossip, rumor, and presumption? And that, I would say it's a very small number that do the research. Even in the so-called awakened and freedom movement, it's only a small number of dedicated truth warriors, keyboard warriors that actually do the hard yards. And the kindest thing we can say about that is that it takes time and energy, and the system has got us depleted in time and energy. It's got us doing, most people are still doing the 9 to 5 or a version of it, and some people are doing 8 to 8 now. And so they are even more depleted in time and energy, and it's completely deliberate. Because if we can make that time and energy, and I had it 10 to 12 years ago because I was defunded. So the one thing I did have was time and energy. And so I took advantage of that. And when the first lockdown, in inverted commas, it was more of a business shutdown than a lockdown, to be honest. But when the first business shutdown came online on early 2020, I had even more time and energy, and I had the place to myself. I felt as though I had Greater Manchester to myself. So I went into bliss, and it was just a beautiful feeling of being able to take time out from the nonsense and chart my own course. And I had that feeling for a good 2 years. So I know a lot of people suffered during the so-called the so-called lockdown, the business shutdown. Yes, businesses were lost and friends were lost. And I accept that. But on a personal level, it was a time of true awakening and realizing who your real friends are, what true intelligence is, not pseudo intelligence that is evidenced by a piece of paper that says you've got a degree on it, which is only one degree, and that leaves you 359 degrees short of a holistic view. So that means you've got to live to be about 1,000 to get, in their system.
Yeah.
You've got to live to be over 1,000 to have a holistic view of life. So yeah, sovereignty is something that is going to form the basis of the new earth. Because in the old world, which soon will be the old world, it was all about some shadowy figure holding sway over your life, and you kowtowing to that, or being deferential and reverential to that. But on the new earth, we will all shoulder, come together as equals and allow each other various expertises. So if I want to know about water and it's, I defer to you. And if you want to know about law, you defer to me, because we all have our own interests and specialisms. And that is where we are going to. So it will be it will be far more collaborative and far more interactive and special. And it will feel as though we're making individualized and personalized contributions, and we will all feel more valued as well. So we've got a lot to look forward to. We've got some nonsense to go through. I think 2026 is shaping up to be an extremely traumatic year. So we need to buckle up, as they say. But beyond that, there's glory on the horizon.
I really love what you said there, David, and particularly about, your perspective of lockdowns, because in the end of the day, everything is always about perspective. And there are some things that you cannot change. And therefore, you need to see the opportunity in things. And whilst at the time you might be losing friends, you might lose your job, you might lose this, that, and the other, you can either see it from that point of view, or you can also see it from the point of view, okay, what is this change going to build for me? What can I get from this? Because there is always an upside. There is always an upside. And I feel that we would not be, and I would not be as knowledgeable as I am now if it wasn't for all of that nonsense. Now, I wasn't put into furlough. So at the time, so I didn't lose my job. I ended up working online because that was my job allowed that. And I ended up being busier than ever. I was working literally flipping 12-hour days all the time, because now all of a sudden, instead of going to meetings, we could all do them on Zoom. So they worked us like dogs. However, it was also very isolating. And therefore, because actually I was working from home, although I had like this really big lot of work to do, I also had the opportunity to study. And I would say I've learnt more in the last 6 years than I have done in the previous 45 years of my life, without a doubt. And I was thinking yesterday, and I was going to write a post about this, David, about what I think about 2026. We're going to be thrown a lot of challenges, definitely. But this is our test. What have you learned over the last either lifetime, or if it's more recent, the last 6 years? Because you're going to be put to the test. But it is not going to be the same as when you were first awakened, right? And you're literally completely in the kind of system, well, as much as you ever were, and you get face this massive challenge, and you've got no grounding, you've got no network, you've got no knowledge, and you can only see it through that lens. We're going to be put into this, but we're going to have completely different eyes, and therefore we're going to be able to navigate this, and we have to navigate this. You know, it's part of the whole process. So I really love your perspective on that, and anybody listening who, you know, has experienced trauma, just understand every single person on this planet experienced trauma. Your trauma is just personal to you, but it is no different to everybody else. And if you can see past the trauma, heal the trauma, and take on the positives, the lessons, the things that you can do as a result of it, when you come out of it, things will be incredibly better for you. So not wallowing in that is so, so important, which is where I want to bring on to your new project, David, which is From Worrier to Warrior, if I can say that right. So
Yeah, it's not
I'd like
easy
to
to
talk
say.
about
Okay, from warrior to warrior. Let me just circle back a little bit to summarize what I think we learned. Yes, I totally agree. The last 6 years, and I've been saying this for some time, I've learned more. I think I've done 1.5 PhDs. Certainly done a PhD in law, and I've probably done a PhD in geopolitics, and not a PhD, probably a master's in geopolitics and a master's in health. So that's a lot, you know, to pack in 5 or 6 years. Well, let me just summarize what I think we've learned. So first of all, from a lawful point of view, what I think we've learned in the last 6 years, particularly people like myself, is that you are only obligated by contract. So I'm really going to summarize everything in just short little sound bites. We are only obligated by contract. So, for example, if you think you're obliged to pay tax, the question you need to ask is, under which contract? Show me the contract. And so I'm going to flip from law to health. Okay, health, viruses. Has a virus ever been isolated in real life? Not on a computer, but in real life. I'm going to just leave it as a question. So these are the two big things that we've seen in the last 6 years that prior to that, we presumed we knew the answer to. We presumed that taxation is, you know, it's like one of the two certainties, death and taxation. Well, in the last 6 years, maybe some of us before that actually, but those who've learnt it have learnt it, most of them have learnt it recently, that these presumptions were not as reliable as we assume them to be. And for those who have a wider view of life, they will also agree that death is just a phase. It's not the end of anything. It's the beginning of another, of your next level existence. And we've also learned that when governments were asked to prove the existence of the virus, which was the one that was circulating in 2020 or 2021, allegedly, no government could actually prove that there was a virus that could be given the pandemic quality. So we've learned some big things in the last few years. And what my task now is to help people to embody that. And I think that people like myself have put pretty much all the information out there that we, you know, it's the law of diminishing returns. There's not that much more that we could put out there. And what we're finding is that people are still hesitating to do anything with that information. That they're still, the programming runs deep. And what the other massive truth we've learned in the last 6 years is that you cannot tell someone the truth, because if they don't see things the way you see it, they won't accept it. It just won't be acceptable. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is they deplatform you, they defriend you, they even threaten to prosecute you or whatever. But what you can do, and this is something that I've learned the hard way, is that you can take your truth and reframe it into a question. And this is one of the things that I do in this workshop, From Worrier to Warrior. I teach people the art of the intelligent question. You know, it's the Socratic method, isn't it? It's the Socratic method of teaching by question and learning by self-questioning. So an example of that, semi-random example of that would be if you look at the timeline of so-called pandemics, there's I think there's 7 dates. There's 1889, 1918, 1957, 1968, 2003, 2010, and 2019. I think that's 7. And I asked the following question: what have those years got in common? And I make a multiple choice. On 2 of the options, there's A, B, C, D, and 2 of the options is fake pandemics and technological rollouts. And one of the things that I tell my attendees is that what we're doing here is we're deschooling. We're giving you questions to which there's not just one answer. There may be 2, there may even be 3. And your best answer may not be the same as my best answer. So we're allowing people the intellectual and moral freedom to work out their own best answer and to go away and think about it. Now, for those of you who've got insatiable curiosity and want to know what my best answer to that is, what have those years got in common? Well, 1889 was labeled the Russian flu, and that was actually the rollout of the electrification of the railway system. 1918 was called the Spanish flu, and that was actually the rollout of radio, because the BBC followed not long after that, just a few years after that. Then 1957 was called the Hong Kong flu. So I get Hong Kong and Asian flu sometimes the wrong way around. But that was the rollout of radar. 1968 was the Asian flu. Could be the Hong Kong flu. I do get them the wrong way around. That was the rollout of low Earth orbit satellite. 2003 was, I think it was swine flu, and that was the rollout of 3G. 2010 was H1N1. That was the rollout of 4G. 2019, I think we can see where I'm going with this, folks.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is we've got 2 narratives. So I appreciate that we're on YouTube and we have to be careful. So one narrative is flu, pandemic, you know, stay indoors, take your jabs, take your drugs. The other narrative is we've got to guide society towards artificial intelligence and the control of humanity through artificial waves, remotely transmitted waves. And if you can see the direction of traffic, the new technological narrative makes more sense than the killer virus pandemic narrative. That's all. It just makes more sense if you can see the direction of traffic. And you can see a playbook in operation that each of those years has got a certain modus operandi. You've got things actually happening and then things being told are happening. And so that's, if knowledge is power, and it is, then we need to know what really is going on. And that only then can we do something about it. And then once you take that knowledge and start to do something about it, you're moving from worrier. You're no longer worried, for example, about killer viruses. You're more of a warrior, determined to harmonize your own system, because you now appreciate that what the actual narrative is a distortion of the human genome, the human biosphere. You know, we are being attacked on all fronts, but particularly electromagnetically, and because we are electromagnetic beings. And once you take on board that concept, then you can start to make adjustments with your nutrition, with your water, with your lifestyle choices, with your mindset. And then you're no longer in victim consciousness. You are moving towards the sovereignty, self-governance, and that empowered position when you actually realize, well, wait a minute, I have trillions of cells in my physical space, and I am the commander of those cells, and each one of those cells has got a certain voltage potential. So that when you do the maths, you realize that you are billions of potential volts. Therefore, just one man or woman could knock out an entire grid. And they don't teach you that at school. And there's a lot that they don't teach you at school. And you know, if we listed the things that they don't teach you at school, it's never ending.
It's never ending.
It's just incredible. So going back to the theme of warrior to warrior, so the idea is that you're learning the difference between false narrative and realistic narrative. You're learning how to question those who still haven't got that far in their own thinking.
Yeah.
And I've got a bank of questions. There's about 45 now, and they are literally, and one of them is the one I've just gone through, the one about, you know, what have those years got in common? And it's, you know, another one just off the top of my head. Why do people pay tax when the people that are taking tax off you can print money out of thin air?
Now, this is like getting on my wavelength, David. I knew this was going to be a really juicy conversation because when we strip everything back to bare bones and going back to sovereignty and sovereignty, is we were at a meeting relatively recently, and I was explaining that everything that is being done to us is attack. Can I use the word sovereignty? It is basically trying to get access to our life force energy.
Yeah.
Because the system and what they're doing doesn't make sense otherwise. Because they have to take something from us. Now, whether it's devices, injections, holding mobile phones, or our time, our energy, which is what you said, life force energy, it all equates to the same thing. We are being depleted of this energy, and that's the ultimate goal. When you fill yourself back up and disconnect yourself from these parasitic attachments, which come in many different ways, and you understand we live in a quantum reality, we're electromagnetic beings. Everything you are seeing in the 3D and physical is as a result of the electromagnetic frequencies. Then you can understand how to take control, because I was speaking to a friend and he was talking about this exact same thing as you, about when it comes down to it, it's parasitic. And I said, yes, because they could create their own circular money system. They don't have to take your birth certificate. They don't have to take a blood sample. They don't have to connect you to their system physically in order for it to just be about money. It's about needing your energy, accessing your life force energy, which is a much deeper connection to who you truly are at a soul level. And the more people can understand that, when you're protecting your being, your sovereignty, maybe another way of saying it, when you start there, you can then start to work out that all the systems are all based on stealing that from you. And someone said to me the other day, they said, well, why don't you just go and get your birth certificate back from the Vatican? I was like, I don't need to. This is energetic. Now I'm aware it's happening. I disconnected them from accessing my soul energy when I realised we can do this on many different levels. How do you feel about that, David?
Absolutely spot on, Joe. So many people come to me and they ask me, well, what paperwork do I need to do this and what paperwork I need to do that? And all along I've been saying you don't need paperwork. The paperwork would just be symbolic of a process that's already taken place in your mind. And in your mind, you've realized who you actually are. You are the source of the energy that they siphon from you. And yes, it's symbolically, they call it currency, but really it's parasitism. And the world you've been brought up in is a parasitic overlay on the natural prime reality, which is the golden earth. The golden earth was always there, is always there, and will always be there. But we've been temporarily disconnected from it because we've been brought up in a world where there's only two certainties, death and taxation and all that. And they've got characters, some people call them non-playing characters, who belong to the world, not to the earth. They belong to the world, and they make up the vast majority of what we would call narcissists. And they are designed to sabotage your life if you allow it. And that's the difference between then and now. Because what I can tell people now, one of the ways that I've gone from warrior to warrior is I've disconnected from the world to a large extent. You can't disconnect completely until the world dissolves, but I've disconnected from the world to the point where I don't get social calls. The only people that get through to me are the people that want to genuinely be with me or talk to me or have something to offer me. And I don't mean that in a material sense, some connection. They're offering me some real connection. And this could be very off-putting for a lot of people, because if you're used to having an active social life, and you can go from an active social life to virtually nil, but it's a glorious nil. It's not nil. I mean, I do have some social life, but it's you realize that people will come, but they're coming voluntarily, and you're accepting them involuntarily. And it's a pleasure. Like last night, I was out socializing, and I do that very rarely. And it was with 5 other people who get it. They don't want anything from you. They just want to be with you. And we were all talking virtually on the same wavelength. And it's glorious. One night a year with people like that is worth 100 nights a year with anybody else. And so what we're doing is we're feng shuiing, we're filtering, we are decluttering, we are disallowing the narcissists, the parasites, whether they are people or concepts or narratives or systems. We are disallowing, we are disentangling, we're disengaging from them. And the universe abhors a vacuum. So what happens is that in their place, they are replaced by your own self, your own magnificence. And when you start to sit in your own magnificence, then other people who are also starting to feel their own magnificence are drawn to you. So it really is, it's an amazing process. It's still, I'm relatively new to it. I've come to a part of the world where I am quite isolated. And the previous version of me would have felt possibly a bit lonely. None of that. I come back, if I go out during the day and come back in the evening, the solitude is glorious. And I even heard David Icke recently talk about glorious solitude, because he's been a family man, and I think he had a second marriage, and I think he's on his own at the moment. And so if people like him are talking about glorious solitude, then I think this is how we're going to bring on the new earth, when people who are in glorious solitude start to empower, recharge themselves, and emanate and resonate outwards a frequency that will obliterate the old world. And that's, I think the number of people that are needed to do that apparently is 144,000, but maybe less these days, I don't know. But it's not a lot of people. A lot of people in glorious solitude being the beacons of light and truth is something that's going to, and it already is, changing things. But you can't bring in the new without a destruction of the old. And that's what 2026, maybe also 2027 is going to be about. And life, so that the tribulations, the distortions, the traumas that you will observe, or that we will observe all around us, they don't nestle in our system. You're just watching a movie. You're just watching a movie, and you can, eat your popcorn and enjoy the popcorn and have some remote empathy. But for the people in trauma, in crisis, being shot dead by hypnotized gunmen or mafia killers or whatever, starving to death, God knows what, being drowned in tsunamis or whatever, and echoing a comment you made earlier, we can't control that. All we can do is say, that movie has to play itself out, and the true warrior takes a step back and cleans up their own act so that they can bring in the new earth for those new humans. That's a book by Mary Rodwell. I don't have any affiliation. That's just, but it's an important book because she is highlighting the quality of the DNA coming through now, that some of these girls and boys have got their DNA ready to go, activated. So they're not shut down the way some of us were in the past, and they're good to go. They can remember their past lives. They know who they are. They can't be lied to, and they
Yes.
can't be controlled. And so we are the kind of the hybrids, people like me and you, Joe, because we've still got a foot in, in the old world, and we are the gatekeepers to make sure that these new humans coming through inherit a glorious earth. We are doing it now. And when I meet them, I can spot them a mile off. They just glow, they shine. And the interesting thing is that they are, and one thing that I noticed when I was at a camp about 2 years, Carry On Camping, I think it was, virtually all the girls and boys there were these shiny new humans. And I was walking around like blissed out, because that's why I'm here. This is part of my sole purpose, to come in and look after them and sort of shepherd them, make sure that their parents don't send them to school, hence School No Place for Children. Mm-hmm. And I looked at their parents and I thought, well, those don't look like shiny humans. It dawned on me that the most precious gift that we have to be protected by hardcore, sort of tattooed men and hardcore, chain smoking women, because they're not going to take any nonsense. They're going to look after their kids. You can't have these new humans being born to lawyers, doctors, dentists, and architects, because they're just going to get dragged down into the system. and it don't, and I had a major aha moment. Yes, I get it.
It's oh my gosh, what stunning things you've just said. And I resonate with absolutely everything that you say, and I would encourage people that don't see things this way yet to realize that is because of your programming and your perspective, if you don't see things like this yet. Because let's just say this, the truth community is heavily infiltrated, and it's a massive psyop. It's there to create a lot of doom and gloom. You don't have to accept their contract for that to happen. And I'm going to give you a really sad example of just how disruptive it is to the human soul and their consciousness when they go down this path. I met somebody that I haven't seen for probably 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And I met them at, it was it was called Stand in the Park then, one of the yellow boards at that time. And I hadn't seen him. He'd really seemed down. He was talking about, I'm doing health and I've split up with my partner and this, that and the other. And he said, yeah, but there's still a lot of stuff going on, isn't there? He said, what we need to do is we need to inject everybody that hasn't seen through the injections yet, and that'll show them, that'll wake them up. And I was like, what? So wow. This is a person who knows what these things do, and their strategy, because they've been living in this fear and this, they've engulfed it, they're engulfed with this hatred, is to be like them. And it isn't because they want them to wake up. It is because they want those people to say, you were right. It was all about them. And they wanted to say, yes, and it's okay right now because they've said that I'm right. Now, I could have said very many things at that time, but because I have to have, obviously, compassion. Otherwise, then I'm on that whole thing. So my compassionate or most compassionate response that I could get at that time, apart from going, oh my God, was, well, I don't feel that's going to work, because being aware of all the systems sent to destroy us is about awareness. Being awake is understanding who you truly are and what you can do to bring in this new earth. And they looked at me like really taken aback, because I think they've connected with a whole bubble of people that go, yeah, that'll see them. And the fact that I did that, it was like, wait a minute, you don't think that injecting people with lethal poison is a good idea so that we can say that we were right. So anyway, they swiftly moved on, but it really saw how much pain and suffering. But actually, before he even said that, he was telling me, oh, I don't follow any of that anymore. I'm not engaged in any of that anymore. You know, I do my own thing. I've moved on myself. So he's absolutely massively kidding himself about the amount of trauma that he's holding. So that trauma he's passing on in every single conversation and absolutely every single thing that he does. And it was very apparent. I think there's still people who are trapped in that trauma cycle. And this is why a lot of the podcasts I've done over the last few months has been about ways to release that trauma. And it isn't, by the way, talking about it again and again and again. It is about releasing it. And there's lots of techniques for doing this kind of thing. And I think it's really important because these trauma-based mind control, it means if you've got trauma, you have a program. You are in the matrix. And so when I say to people, I am not in the matrix, and they say, well, do you pay tax? Do you do this? I said, that's not being in the matrix. It's like, this is an energetic parasitic system. What you see in the physical is almost irrelevant. It's like, I don't operate in their system. I don't connect to the magnetic frequencies of the matrix. It doesn't matter if I'm holding a mobile phone. It doesn't matter if I'm in a really low energetic space. I am sovereign. My soul is connected to the divine source of everything. It doesn't matter where I am. And that's when you have that knowledge and that power. When I go to places or when I do something, the outcome is very different to when people go and do the same thing but are in fear. They come back with this problem or that drama, but I don't. It's like I had quite a thing happen yesterday, and just to share this story, I mean, I have chickens in my garden. It's amazing how I've done it, right? So they have a big shed to be in. They let out automatically to keep them away from the foxes. And I just keep my eye on things and feed them. They're free range, they're organic. They even have the same water that I drink. These are amazing. But when I got home yesterday, a fox had got in the daytime and killed 4 of the 5 chickens. And these are my babies who bring me my eggs. I managed to save one. Now, I went through an awful lot of grief and blame. Now, thinking about it, I wouldn't have done anything differently. And when I was talking to Kelly about this, because I was upset about, what I was upset about is not their passing, because I know it would have been quick and that's nature. I was upset about my own responsibility. Could I have done any more? It was literally about me. But then when I thought about it, what I said to Kelly was, I said the fox must have been really hungry and very desperate to come out in the daylight. And she said, that is typical of you, Joe, to think like that rather than, oh, I hate foxes, oh, this is terrible. And that's literally how my mind thinks. And so because I think like that, and that's how my being thinks, when I interact with anything, whether it's systems or people, that's the kind of response I get back, because that's all that my filter will allow.
Well, we could even take that to another level, Joe, because you said you had 5 and 4 got killed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it could have been all 5. The fox may well have factored in that to leave you without any chickens would have been unfair. Who knows what goes through a fox's mind?
Mm-hmm.
So the universe was saying, okay, let's let the fox be a fox, but let you have 1 chicken that you can build on, so you'll still get something out of the event. And, so that's called accentuating the positive, isn't it? And I think going back to the idea that we were sharing about this guy that wanted to inject people to wake them up and to show them, to teach them a lesson and to prove himself right. So the way I would look at it is that this is a man who's not thinking and feeling and vertically. So the truth is a vertical process. You get it from it comes down from a higher frequency down to you. Whereas when you interact, when you're observing the world, it's more horizontal. Like so-called killer viruses, they're horizontal, aren't they? They're transmitted horizontally, allegedly. But the truth is a vertical thing. So that man was short of vertical truth. There was a disconnection from his higher self, which made him focus and blinded him to how he could access a higher reality. And all he's concerned about is the reality that his eyes, the two eyes, and that's not the real. That's when you're not realizing anything. The real eye is the third eye, isn't it? It's the, let thine eye be single, isn't it? It's a biblical quote. So it's when you're connected vertically, that's when the events that you're witnessing horizontally can be reframed more easily. And like your Fox story and his story everything can be reframed. So it's like what we were saying about the business shutdown. We reframed it and we saw it as an opportunity. So everything the universe presents can be regarded as an opportunity for growth. That's when you are in connection. And that's when, because there is no need where life is a connection of moments, isn't it? It's moment by moment. And each moment, there is an infinitely small space in which you can choose your attitude to that last moment. That's called being present, isn't it? It's being present in that infinitely small space between moments that is so small we don't notice it. We don't notice life from going from moment to moment. And that being present, and this is another warrior to warrior. The warrior is not in that present moment. They're focused on the past, which is called depression, and/or focused on the future, which is called anxiety. And that's where, and those are fear-based emotions. So if you can get into the present moment, that is where the power is, and that is where the self-governance is, and that is where you become the director of the movie, which we call life.
Beautifully said. And being aware of your programs and deciding which ones that you want to continue with, because you might have programmed yourself quite well to deal with various things. But if you are just running programs that other people have given you, whether they are in the recent years in the truth community or whether it's from school or wherever, then you are robotic. And this is what the non-player characters are. You see, I also hear that there's many people on this earth that don't have a soul, and there's something like 40% of people walking around. I need to dispel this myth. There are people who can see souls, right? There's people that I trust so much, and I'm not going to go into this whole story as to why, who can see souls. Okay, everyone has a soul unless they are reptilian, right? Basically, now more and more people can see this kind of stuff, but they're very rare in your general population. What there is a disconnect here, as you were saying, David, their pineal gland. Literally, if you think about the fact that you've got the Matrix radio station, Satan FM, if you like, the divine radio station, depends on which one you're tuning into, as to the information you're going to receive, the frequencies that are going to be within you, and therefore what you're going to resonate with. So if you're tuning into a lot of, and I mean embodying, bringing into your being information that's negative, this is what you're going to resonate, and you're going to attract more of that, because this is a frequency war. But you can observe something, like I can see what happened on Bondi Beach. I can see all the stuff to do with, conspiracies to do with that. And I think they're probably are all right. And of course, I see that there was suffering. There's definitely people going to be traumatized just by being in there. However, right, we all experience trauma. We've all got this in us. What I can't bring all that into me as an empath even, and start to resonate with that suffering, because I'm just going to bring it more in. I need to figure out what I need to do. And something that AJ Roberts said on my show, which I thought was really important, he said, in the animal kingdom, they don't, apart from when they're domesticated, they don't have trauma. And a lion doesn't always catch his prey. In fact, most of the times, like 9 times out of 10, he doesn't catch his prey. So he'll go and not catch it, and he'll be shattered, and her mates have been watching, right? And do you know what he does? He comes back, takes some time for him or herself, and shakes, releases. Because if he or she didn't, they would then go into that next fight remembering that I didn't do it, and I looked a dickhead in front of my other lion mates, right? And now they're less likely to catch their prey. So they shake it off. They get
Yeah.
rid of this. And this is where shaking, EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping, dancing, movement, singing, expression is so important.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, movement, this is your field now. You can drink the most beautiful water, resonant water, structured water. But if all you do is sit down and read a book on it, that water's still going to stagnate in your body. So it's got to be moved around. We are in constant flow. There's, the only constant in the universe is change. And this is another thing that holds people back, is that the fear of change. Change has to be celebrated much more than it actually is. And the other thing, that when I was working with a shamanic practitioner, this was one of the things that brought my income back up after I'd been deplatformed. It was working with a shamanic practitioner. And his way of helping people move forward was to teach them that you can't change something inside of yourself until you own it. So you have to face it. So that lion is facing the fact that he failed, but he's just saying, I failed, but I'm just going to let failure go. Yeah. And the equivalent for humans is to say that you feel profoundly weakened by whatever. This is the technique that we used to use. So you own the feeling, and then you can transform it by saying, I feel profoundly weakened by whatever it was, whatever trauma it was, whatever feeling it is. And when you admit that you feel weakened by it, then you're starting to transform it already, to be quite honest. And one of the things you don't learn at school is self-management, managing conflict, falling in, falling out. So we've got these zillions of micro traumas from life, from the hustle and bustle of life, and we don't have a strategy to release them. Certainly not a conscious strategy. And so these are the things that we really need to be aware of, that just like the sovereign who's self-responsible for law and finance, that psychologically and biopsycho-spiritually, we can take control of our own system by monitoring ourselves and correcting any errors that have taken place. There are going to be more errors and glitches, but we just have to accept that and address them and then move on. And rather than moving on, if all you do is have a pint of beer or play bingo or go to a football match, that's not moving on. That's just stirring the toxic pot and distracting yourself from the obligation you have to yourself, not to anyone else, but to yourself, to clean up your act. And so that's the big difference between some in the freedom movement and others in the freedom movement. And it has been I'll be honest and say it's been disappointing at times to see how few people in the so-called freedom movement are actually accepting self-responsibility and cleaning up their act, and still looking around for that savior figure who's going to clean up their act for them. And it's sad, but there's so many people that still haven't grasped the nettle. They will, because they have to. And that's why I'm still very, very much galvanized. I'm very active in terms of, I'm not going around the country doing talks, but the workshops will ripple outwards, because that's where all you have to do is get 100 people. It's the 100 monkey syndrome, isn't it? 100 people. No, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, 100 apes, right? 100 monkeys. Say, right, I know what David's saying, and I know what Joe's saying. I get it, and I'm going to do something with that information. And they then become the beacons, and they then can galvanize 100 people, and it can take place pretty quickly, actually. This galvanization of sufficient numbers to make very profound changes is a heartbeat away.
Heartbeat away. Well, I'd love to maybe have a chat after this, David, and work out maybe how we can collaborate together. I mean, as you say now, this is all about collaboration and working together. And by the way, I'm going to put all David's links in the show notes so you can see his website, his YouTube channel, and you'll be able to find out more there about this amazing Warrior to Warrior event and information David's put out there in the past. And also, just to remind people that what you consume as social media and what you read also, controls your mind. If you are seeing a lot of stuff on your social media, which is like, here's a conspiracy theory, it's another person's view on the conspiracy theory, that's all you're going to be seeing. Whereas why don't you start looking at like emotional freedom techniques and meditation, and because this meditation basically switches on different parts of your brain. When this part of your brain is activated, that's when you're in that mode that you've just said, David. This is your logical thinking you can only see with your eyes. Until you switch on all the rest of it, it's not working properly, right? You're not in your full power. And especially when you're traumatized, you're in flight or fight, tunnel vision, and a lot of your brain is shut down. And they've even proven that your IQ is reduced, your ability to problem solve is reduced. So we reset our nervous system with all the programs that are in it, and we start operating in our true power, which means that every decision you make is going to be different. The way you think is different. But as we're starting to see these EMF fields that are distortion fields being removed, because they are, and probably you guys have heard me talk about this, but I can talk about it more another time. These distortion fields are being removed by grid workers. It gives you more of an opportunity. It's a lot easier to be connected to the divine source. And if you really want to be sure, don't take your mobile phone with you. Go out and go and sit as deep as you can, not just in your back garden, into a forest somewhere. Go and sit by a tree, connect to it and think. And everything changes because you realize that the information you're receiving is completely different. It's like you're not different. It's what you're thinking is different, which tells you your external environment is controlling you. So, David, thank you so much for sharing everything that you have done today. I
You're
think
very welcome.
we could probably do this again and add on more because we're both dying to say but so many more
More
things.
thing. Can I just add one thing,
I was
Joe,
going
to
to
what you
say
were saying?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, just one thing. If people want a quick hack on how to empower themselves, it's basically breathe through the nostrils, breathe consciously through the nostrils, and you'll hyperventilate less. Breathing through the nostrils fills the body with nitric oxide, and it also slows down the thought processes. So do what Joe suggested, get into nature and sit still and breathe and slow the breathing down. And that really, and also if you're exercising, be aware that, if you're panting a lot, then that exercise is probably a bit too strenuous. We should really just not, panting a little bit may be okay, but the sovereign does exercise in such a way that it doesn't make them lose, they don't have to recatch their breath. So breathing is massively important. And the other thing I wanted to add is that, I suppose on a more pragmatic note, is if people want to explore the courses that I do, they'll find them on the website. And there's an extensive course you do in your own time, and there's an intensive course that we do over 6 weeks. So those are the main things. Oh, and I always forget to mention, I do paid consultations if you have a lawful legal issue which is intractable and you're tired of solicitors, because they're the parasites, I'm afraid. They will just take a lot of money off you and do very little in return. Whereas I've inverted that process. I don't take that much money off you, and I do my best to help you resolve an issue. So there's something I thought I would throw in.
No,
Thanks, Joe.
brilliant. It's brilliant to have you around. And for those people who are going to make it easy for you. So it is https on // thepeopleslawyeruk.com, just to make it easy to try and find you.
Yeah.
We are absolutely blessed that you are with us in this community, David, with your massive experience, and that you chose at that time of difficulty to go on the path of enlightenment and then to stand up and share this I mean, none of us really doing all this podcast stuff. We don't get paid to do this stuff. We're doing it for the good of humanity. We understand the 100 monkey effect. And we understand that we as Gen X's, boomers and the millennials, right, we are here to pave the way for the Gen Z and the Gen Alphas, that they are the future. But also, we're not going to be living till we're like 70, 80. We're going to be living very long lifetimes.
Yeah.
Right? And I keep saying to people, I'm going to be living till I'm 149. I know that I am. And I'm only going to be leaving them because I get bored here, right? I know it. I can't tell you how that's going to happen to this day. It's here. It's just a vibration. And every single time I feel it right in my stomach. So there's going to be massive, beautiful things happen. And it's all going to start really falling into place by 2028. We haven't got long. But you don't get long by holding on. You get on by going, right, I'm living this authentic, truthful, divine existence. Don't give them any of your power. And so if you can keep your head over the next couple of years, if you've kept it already so far, frankly, that's it. It's not going to be any harder than that. You've got to keep it for the next couple of years and everything's going to really, really pan out very well for everybody, as we are the guardians for the next generations, who will then, we can retire and hand over the reins to them and they can do all the hard work, right? And that's what they're going to be here for. So, David, we're so just so honoured and blessed to have you here. I really appreciate your time and your journey to get us to this point. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure, Joe. And yeah, we'll have to do it again to go further and deeper into all things esoteric and truthful. I mean, there's so many cliches, you know, but what you know, we're running out of language, really, aren't we?
We are, because this world is a lot kind of simpler than people, and how you like move around in this world is a lot simpler than what people think, but it's very alien in terms of what we've been taught. So it's all good. We will get there. Thank you so much to everybody listening to this now. I hope what we've said today will resonate some way with you. And we really appreciate your energy you bring to this podcast. Please like and share and tell people about it, and tell about this wonderful particular chat that I've had with David today, because I think it's been really inspiring. So join me again next week on the Crystal Water Experience podcast, where every week I bring on a different subject matter expert or somebody with an amazing tale to tell. Information you won't find on mainstream. Thank you very much.